This is a special edition of Late Night Health. If you wear hearing aids like I do, and I've been wearing hearing aids for about 6 years now. Hearing aids have saved my life. Signia has saved my life. And I will make the point that they have provided me with a pair of hearing aids, which I've reviewed and we've talked about in the past. What do you do when you have to wear a mask and you have hearing aids? I'm telling you, there are some major problems. We're going to spend some time with Dr. Eric Branda. Eric is an audiologist and director of Applied Audiological Research for WS Audiology, a manufacturer for Signia hearing instruments in the United States. Eric, it's nice to see you again and talk with you.
Hey, happy to be here. Thank you.
I'm really curious. I'm not a lip reader, but it would seem to me that just going into a market, staying 6 feet apart, and wearing a mask, as we should all do, is a real problem for people who are hard of hearing.
It's actually a problem for people with hearing loss as well as even normal hearing listeners. And I always jump right onto that, people don't think we read lips, but that's something we start doing from a very young age. It's not that we're, can turn off all the sound and read lips, but they give us so many different cues. A lot of the sounds that become harder to hear, the high frequency sounds, your S's, T's, P's, K's, a lot of those sounds are very visible. And so we actually, if we might not hear it so well, they sometimes, the lips complement that and help us hear it. Some people will say they actually hear better with their glasses on. And it actually helps facilitate sounds we might be missing or that might be covered by background noise. Also, it gives us indications of gaps between speech when there's a slight pause between words. So these types of things really are things we just grow up learning. It's something that just by talking and facing one another, we innately make those relationships. And that's one of the first things that goes away with a face mask is that we lose those visual cues. It's one of what I say here, 3 major impacts.
You actually have published an article on that, and we'll talk about that in a minute. COVID-19, it's affecting everybody, right? Does it have more of an impact, do you think, or at least a different impact on those who have hearing difficulties?
Well, it does in the sense of the masks are what I find to be a key thing, because we talked a little bit on the visual piece, and you had mentioned earlier about the social distancing. And as we social distance, the farther we get away, we usually talk around 3 feet. Now you're making that 6 feet. That takes usually around 6 decibels off of a sound, which just starts to make those sounds harder to hear. Then we put a mask over that. We lose those visual cues, as we mentioned, but we also lose some of the higher frequency sounds that are, again, important for clarity and distinction of speech. Now, some of the blue surgical masks that we wear, they only take a few dB off, but then you add a few more dB when you distance, you lose some of the visual help, and someone with normal hearing may start to struggle. Now you put the N95 mask on, and now we see measures around 12 dB at some of these critical areas. And that may not mean a lot to everybody, but that really starts to impact what sounds you can hear. In fact, I would say that somebody with normal hearing would start to feel like they have a hearing loss. Someone with hearing aids is going to struggle. And then somebody who's not wearing hearing aids but does have a hearing loss. These, I think, are the people that are most impacted because they're struggling just in normal conditions. And now the masks are making it even more difficult for them to hear with their hearing loss. So I think they're at a bigger disadvantage. And
I feel like I have to shout wearing a mask. So if I ask a question of somebody in a store, where's the pizza pie? They may not hear me. If I pick up my phone to call my wife to say, hey, I found a pizza pie. It has pepperoni. Do you want pepperoni or not? She has problems hearing me when I'm wearing the mask, right?
That is exactly it. And I just ran into a similar thing just going through a drive-through, because now I have I won't say they're all this way, but the quality of a drive-through speaker, somebody on the other end wearing a mask. And what tends to happen is in any of those situations, you'll say something, and if they, you may repeat it to verify, but if you're repeating the same thing that was already hard to hear, you're probably just going to mishear it again. It's kind of goes to one, I think my key strategies is to rephrase, not always repeat, because you can help to, in those situations, whether you're communicating with the mask or talking to somebody else who has the mask, trying some different words, some different sounds, and we can start to piece the imagery together better to understand what they're saying.
We've talked about, I'm going to take my mask off, and we are going to have to talk about the problem that happens when you take off your mask. Your hearing aids get caught. And it's very disconcerting because I don't want to lose these for a number of reasons. One, they're expensive. And two, without them, I don't hear well. And I don't know if there's a way of taking the mask off that, I've missed. But the hearing aids get caught in the straps and all of that. Have you heard about that?
I don't hear about that a lot, but it's clearly one of those, I should say, if some of our new normal, that's one of the conditions that can start to be a factor. Some instruments are going to be completely in the ear and be less susceptible to that, but the ones that go behind the ear, which often have some really nice functionalities with them, it's one of those things where being careful while doing it is just kind of reteaching ourselves to be mindful of it.
One of the issues that comes up to me is that as somebody who is hard of hearing, and that's because with all the years I've had in broadcasting, when I started, we used to crank up the dB, the decibels, and decibels are a measure of loudness, basically. Would that be an accurate?
Yeah.
Yes, description. And we would just crank the hell out of our headphones. And at the time, we had what we called closed-end headphones, which means that if I was wearing this and you were standing next to me, I couldn't hear you at all. I mean, it was like being in another world. And that obviously was not a smart thing that we did. Now, some people got through it, others did not. I apparently did not. And I didn't do that much music. I've always talked. So I was listening to you, a call-in guest, myself, at a very high level. And it's obviously has affected my hearing, and there may be some genetic factors in there as well. With COVID-19 and taking a look at those who are affected by with the hearing loss, what can we do to hear better in the market? I mean, is there some magic that you are going to share with us, I hope?
So really the key comes down to if you're experiencing hearing loss, whether it's been from loud exposure to loud sounds, because repeated exposure to loud sounds will lead to a noise-induced hearing loss. Some factors with genetics or aging are going to lead to hearing loss, often affecting, as I mentioned, those higher frequencies that the masks are impacting them more also. And I always encourage people, if you've got questions about it, go get your hearing check. Because the first thing is to find out what's going on, which with COVID-19, that becomes a little bit more of a question mark for some people about how they want to do that and how they want to go about that. And there actually are some solutions.
And that's what you're talking about is if I want to go see my audiologist, one, she may not want to have patients come to her. That's one. And two, I may not want to go see her. And if you have a compromised immune system because you have high blood pressure, diabetes, you're over a certain age, you want to minimize your contact with people, right?
That's exactly it. And that's what we've looked at some solutions for that. Because ultimately, yes, I'd like to go in and have a complete diagnostic assessment. And that's not always possible. But we do have some things. We have remote care. With Signia, we've been working with a telecare approach and telehealth for several years. And we have a remote care where we can actually do an assessment online of the hearing to get a pretty accurate idea of what's going on with the ears, that we could even look at prescribing some hearing aids and doing some non-touch solutions. We can get hearing aids programmed. The audiologist can actually get you fitted without necessarily having to see you in the office, or they can find out what's going to work most comfortably for you. And if you've already had a hearing test done, it makes it even easier because now they have a more accurate diagnosis of the hearing loss and can find the appropriate solutions for that hearing loss.
In the old normal, how often should we have our hearing checked?
So I've heard different numbers on where people like to go. I personally think make it just part of your annual checkup. Because you're not always going to see a big fluctuation year to year, but once you start getting a baseline, follow that baseline, because the earlier we can address the hearing loss, the better you will tend to do with amplification, because the brain likes that input. It likes the auditory input. And when it starts to go away, some of those parts of the brain don't always, they're kind of missing. And if we can keep that going, it's just going to help with communication and understanding people.
And what you're saying is that hearing is so important that if you start losing your hearing and you don't do anything about it, you're more apt to come down with dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, that's just a proven fact.
There are a lot of associations now showing that with hearing loss as well as dementia. And there's a lot of research going on to even tighten up the correlations that we see there. So to me, it just makes sense that if you're noticing something going on, get it looked at. If you've got a leak in your roof, you get that patched right away. If you're noticing a hearing loss, you get it checked out. And the solutions we have out there now, there's usually a solution for everybody, whether you've got cosmetic concerns. We have hearing aids that look more like earbuds than they do traditional hearing aids. And even traditional hearing aids have now become very small, very discreet.
Right.
So cosmetics, we can address that very easily. And then functionality, just amplifying sound, to me, that's the easy part of what the hearing aid does. Addressing the background noise, we can do things to give somebody with hearing loss actually better speech understanding and noise than somebody with normal hearing, because we can actually suppress a lot of the background sounds, whether it's behind or even stuff in the foreground. We can help suppress that. And it just improves speech understanding and noise. And we can also do streaming directly to the hearing aid. Your phone can stream directly to the hearing aids through the prescription and algorithm set up in the hearing aid, so you can hear very comfortably where you need to hear.
And I do that all the time. I do that constantly. When I make a phone call, I'm listening in my head through my hearing aids. With the telemedicine, and I don't know if this is possible or not, I know that if a patient has a heart monitor of any kind, you can actually telemedicine, and they can adjust it through Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all the magic of technology. Can that be done too for hearing aids? Can they be adjusted?
We do two, I just think are very fun things, slick things with how we can adjust that. One, we usually have an app that can access the hearing aid through Bluetooth. And the app has a new functionality in it that if you're having challenges in a certain situation, you can tell it what's going on, and it can help make some changes to the hearing aid settings for you to address those particular issues that you're having.
I want that.
It's one type of self-care approach to it.
Right.
And then along with that, with the telecare capabilities or telehealth, the audiologist and you can find a time that, hey, let's meet. You'll have your phone. They'll interact with you through the phone and be able to make changes to the hearing aids from their office to your phone. It could be at a place where you're having difficulties or as a general follow-up. So again, you don't have to go into the office. You can do it from the comfort of your living room, or maybe it's an auditorium where you were having problems and you want to be there and they want to see what's going on, and maybe they'll pick up on something that you weren't thinking you should have reported, because there's different things in the environment that don't occur to us that might be important. And
excuse me.
Adjustment.
Thank you. One of the things that people don't understand, people without a hearing loss, is the differentiation of words. And I mean, we're tested for that when you have a hearing loss, and when you have a hearing test, you are tested for that. And they say no man is an island, no person is an island. And when you don't hear, you are an island. You're left out. You're left out of a conversation. And when you can't differentiate words, and I know you can give us some examples of that, where you misinterpret because you're not understanding what the speaker is saying.
That's exactly correct, because when it comes to speech sounds, the low frequencies tend to be vowels, and most people that run into a hearing loss don't lose hearing for the vowels. So a hearing loss isn't just turning down the volume. It's more like adjusting an equalizer. So the bass sounds are usually left up there. You've got the vowels, but the consonants, the high frequency sounds, those are what are important for distinguishing different words. The word cat versus the word cash. Just that T and that SH, those have a world of difference in meaning. If I'm saying I'm going to give you a cat, or I'm going to give you cash, that's two different things you might be receiving. And if you can't hear those, you might have a sentence where you can't even fill in the gaps. If I said the cat went in the litter box, yeah, if you didn't understand cat, you might figure out what I was talking about. But if I said something like, oh, I'm going to give you some cash, or I'm going to give you...
Thank you, Eric.
Things like that where you don't have context, it can become very confusing. You start thinking one thing because you misunderstood. And so we want the hearing aids to really help bring up those consonant sounds and really bring clarity and distinction back to the speech, because it's those consonants are what give us the distinction in words. The vowels carry the power, but the consonants really give us the clarity.
And there's a clarity setting within the hearing aid. So these are the modern hearing aid is much more powerful than just amplification, as you said. So going back to the Civil War, when we see pictures with that big horn being stuck into the ear and the guy is walking around holding it, the technology has certainly changed from that time.
Absolutely. The big benefit to the big horn is if somebody saw it, they might actually talk louder to help you out. But we always want more discreet, and we really want to be able to fine tune where the hearing loss is, because I don't need to amplify everything. I need to amplify where the hearing loss is, and also make adjustments for softer sounds versus average sounds versus loud. We don't have a hearing loss for loud, so I don't need to make loud louder, but I need to make soft audible. And that's what gets to be the interesting part to really help with speech communication.
And the people who, and I'm one of these, who fight hearing aids, the number one reason that I've seen in studies that people don't buy hearing aids, it's not the cost, it's vanity. I don't want to feel old. Do you hear that a lot?
You hear that a lot, and it's a matter of they don't necessarily want to feel old, and they're also more concerned that other people will consider them old, even though we've seen studies showing that people don't think of them as old. So it becomes this whole self-perception that really works against you. And I always say that, when it comes down, with the hearing loss, that, when you can't hear, that's what's going to make you look older. Yes. The hearing aids are going to help. People will notice that you're struggling when you don't have the hearing aids.
Absolutely. And in my case, people know that I act like I'm a 21-year-old guy, and because men are actually boys, but we're just bigger. And my wife tells me to grow up all the time. Eric, in our last couple of minutes together, why did you become an audiologist? Was it something personal?
It was actually, when I got into audiology, it was because for me, audiology and hearing care is a combination of an art and a science. I love the science of it, that it can be very technical. I can look at the frequencies and know what pieces of frequencies are important for helping somebody understand better. But then there's also that human impact that, it's not just a frequency, it's the quality of the sound that you're hearing. And to be able to marry those two together, I just find it very meaningful.
Are you into music too?
I am into music. I'm enjoy music of all different sorts. I sing. I like to perform. So I've grown up with music, and it's being able to, and I think that contributes to my appreciation.
Wow. You're doing any virtual concerts?
It's not right now. It's been a little quiet for me right now.
Got it. Eric,
I learned from my daughter quite a bit.
Yeah, I was singing to a young one just before we started. I was singing the Mickey Mouse Club song, and I hadn't sung that in years, and I got about 3/4 of the way through. I was very proud of myself, remembering those words. Eric, thank you very much. We've had the website up, so if you want information about hearing and hearing loss, I heartily recommend you going to the website. What is that website? I'll ask you to give that out, Eric.
The website is signiausa.com, and we have a lot of information about hearing loss, and even some information on face masks on there. So it's a nice resource for just trying to learn about how we hear.
And I appreciate that. Hold on, Eric. I'm Mark Allen. Join us at latenighthealth.com. That's latenighthealth.com. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.